okay, how do people you encounter in the astral view those of us who are incarnated? Are they curious about making contact with people still living? Do they ever talk about the previous Earth experience? That's a really interesting question, because the one thing we have to bear in mind, that people are much less affected by their own death than we are here of their death, by their death, you know. So people who have died, they have no problems with having died at all, because they can at any time see us, and the way they see us is via our astral body. While we are alive, we have an astral body which operates on the astral level, which is subject to emotion, to feelings, to thoughts. And all our relatives need to do is simply see us, go and meet us. And our astral body, we may be totally unaware of it on the physical level, because we have got these dense filters which prevent us from seeing the people. You know, that's where mediums have got a little bit of an advantage, because they can break through the barrier, and they can actually transcend the barriers, which I can't do. I can only transcend it when I'm out of my body. So yes, so they have no problems of contacting us, and they probably won't miss us as much as we miss them, because we are just, you know, there if they want to contact us. So if you take some cultures, for example, if you take the Japanese culture, there is this strong religious aspect of worshipping their ancestors. They have integrated in their physical belief system that the ancestors are always around them. You know, their relatives are always around them. They're not separated. And in the folklore of the Chinese or the Japanese, very often they don't make any distinction between this life and that life. So they accept that their ancestors are still there, and they can talk to them if they wanted to. Do they ever talk about their previous Earth experiences? Now, the thing is, of course, when I meet my mother, I ask her what happened to her second husband, because my father died when I was very young, and her second husband was he wasn't there, he wasn't around when I saw her, you know. And I said, what happened to your husband? And she said, well, the people we are with in our life are not always the people we want to be with when we are progressing, you know. And I then remembered that her husband was a very controlling guy, to the extent that my mother lost all her friends and went into a deep depression eventually, because she was disabled, she couldn't do much. And I only found out after she died the extent to which he controlled her life, you know. My mother would never talk about it, but after I met her, she told me about what had happened. And also the same was with my brother-in-law. When I met him, we were talking about what happened in his previous life, and he said a lot of the things I believed in turned out to be absolute rubbish, you know, including a guide he saw as a bit of a spiritual teacher in a kind of spiritual group he was involved in. He thought he was a bit of a charlatan, you know, and I don't have anything to do with these people anymore. I've sort of moved on, and I don't even want to talk about it, you know. So, yeah, so people don't cut themselves off from their experience. They carry it over. They see life as a continuum. They progress from this life into the next life. That doesn't necessarily mean they pay a lot of attention to their past. You know, some people are so involved with a new astral life that they're rather happy to, you know, to put a line under it, and they don't want to be reminded. People who had a very hard life, let's say they were sick a lot, you know, they sort of blossom into their new existence, and they rather not be reminded of where they had come from. Question 4, are we forced to reincarnate? If not, what attracts people to want to endure the hardship of the earth life? That's a really interesting question. I've meditated a lot about it, and I have also first-hand experience of reincarnation, which I documented in my first book. And also, the one thing I would say, we have to accept how different the astral life is compared to the earth life. And the earth life has got one thing which the astral world or the higher dimensional worlds don't have. When we incarnate, we are confronted with resistance. You know, on the astral level, life is pretty easy because we only have to focus on certain aspects, and we can be there. We can realize, we can materialize our wildest dreams if we have activated the energy. You know, the spiritual energy, which is basically a positive energy. If we've got a positive energy of love and goodwill and appreciation, you know, then we are in a position to make all our dreams come true, you know. So we may feel like the ultimate lottery winners. And it's quite easy when we are in this state. We can travel to any part of the world, but we cannot do that easily on the physical level. And it's this resistance which we find on the physical level, which doesn't exist anywhere else. And this resistance actually creates, energizes certain powers within us which help our spiritual growth, our growth as a person, our development. And the greater the challenge is here on this physical earth, the greater our spiritual growth, our personal growth becomes. And we can manifest things. When we manifest here, let's say, a millionaire's palace, you know, that is much harder than doing so on the astral level. So that's why I think the physical earth is such an attractive place for people to want to incarnate. And that's why we have so many people living on this place, even though most people will probably, especially in poorer countries, or people who are have a lot of hardship, they will probably not see it like that. You know, they will probably be glad to get out of it. But nevertheless, any effort we have to make here is an effort well made, which leaves a trace in our soul and in our growth. And that's, we realize that when we get over there and we have a review of our past life, then we can actually see what went wrong, what went on, how we dealt with situations, what we learned, and so on. So it's a very powerful place to be here on this earth. And that is not the only reason why we're here. There are other reasons. And the other reasons are karmically. You know, for example, I learned that when I had a total view of myself, which you can have when you go into a higher state of consciousness, and you don't see your physical life, or you don't see yourself as a person as you do here, with an identity, let's say in my case, me being an artist or something, you know, being married and things like that. You see yourself in a completely different context. You see just your present life as one aspect of who you are. When you enter a higher state of consciousness, you see all the other aspects of who you are, the other aspects of who you were in the past life, and also aspects of you which you don't even know about. You know, and that is really interesting, because you can then see, for example, once you see a life like that of your past, you can then zoom into this life, and that life becomes a here and now living reality. So let's say you were a soldier in the Napoleonic army, and you are camping out outside Moscow, you actually are the soldier. You feel the cold, you see the people around you, you remember the loved ones you left behind, you have got all the memory of the person. It feels exactly how it feels, like you are here. And then you can zoom out again and you can see the whole tapestry, the whole web of the totality of who you are, and then you can zoom into any aspect of your past life and bring it back into the present. Now the other thing you can also see, you can see, if you imagine yourself as a infinite brain, let's say, where every nerve center is an aspect of yourself. You can then see from this elevated position of higher consciousness, you can see energy centers which have problems, let's say, or which are have disturbances, okay? And when you see these and then you can see how the whole thing functions together, how the energies percolate throughout the whole system. And there are certain attractions taking place which gather certain energies and bundle them together, and then these energies are attracted to a certain situation like a life on earth. So they come together and you are incarnated. And it's not you as the ego who decides whether you want to incarnate. It is you as a totality, as your higher self who decides. And it feels quite naturally to want to incarnate, because from your higher self point of view, you just want to sort things out. You want to experience certain things. You want to create a level playing field again, you know. And the whole idea of soul growth comes out of this energy field of the totality of yourself. And then when you incarnate, you do it out of your own free will. But I mean, I've come across people who at the moment of their incarnation, who I saw on the astral plane just before they were going to incarnate, they chickened out. Okay, they had the personality, the persona already in place, but then they decided against it. And of course, you have the freedom not to do that. And one person I mentioned there was a lady who died of starvation during the big depression in America, and she was several times she attempted to incarnate. And every time she sort of withdrew because her experience was so unpleasant, you know. And another person I met who was going to incarnate. Now the thing is, what happens? The person who incarnates, they already have got their persona in place, you know, their individuality, all the characteristics they bring with them. They're already assembled on the astral plane and they're ready to manifest. And sometimes they can be very similar to the one they had in the previous existence, you know, and they're just carrying on. In other situations, there may be completely a new configuration. So that is the question of reincarnation. I'm sure there's a lot more to it, and I'm sure I don't have all the answers to it, and everything else that is to it. But there is a certain amount of choice. You know, we can decide whether we want to incarnate or not.